Something of a delay. So, hello everyone. Something of a delay. So, hello everyone. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Rupert.
Sorry, I didn't see you sitting in the waiting room. I was
That's all right. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And Thomas, welcome.
And Matthew.
Hi. Nice to see you.
Yeah. How is everybody?
Good, thank you. Yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, it's frustrating to be in Norway, where the country anyway has handled things relatively well, and now we're getting slammed with the worst of it, and the vaccines are not coming, and it's not. It's just it's exhausting.
It's really strange because Trondheim has had about 3 cases in the last week. It's ridiculously low. But now I think the government has just put on nationwide restrictions. So everyone here is kind of slightly frustrated because we've had so much freedoms otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, even in Oslo, right, where it's been obviously the worst in Norway, it's been relatively relaxed for a long time. Like I'm at home now, but I still have access to my office when I want it. Strange days.
Definitely, yeah.
But you're working with Tora.
Yeah.
Which is, he said you were very sort of hospitable in the beginning. You reached out to him and things like that. He's one of our favorites here for sure. So you're very lucky.
He's a wonderful colleague. Yeah, I'm really happy he's here, and he's been contributing lots to the department in very positive ways already.
Yeah. I'm a drummer in a band that I play in.
Okay.
So I'm close friend.
So, Thomas, did you just want to? Are you using a PowerPoint or anything?
I am. I've got a keynote presentation document. Shall I try and share it now?
Yeah. Does it have any musical examples? Or?
Nope.
No. Well, that makes it simple. Do you want to just try and share it? We'll just check it works. And there we go.
Is it all right?
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. I see that.
Should I leave it on or shall I take it down for now?
No, if you take it down for now, because I'll at the beginning I'll just introduce first of all next month's seminar.
Yeah.
Which is IASPM Latin America, and once I've done that, I'll hand over to Kyle. Actually, I'll just say that it's IASPM Norden hosting, and hand over to you.
Yeah, and then I'll say a few words of thanks and some basic stuff, and when Thomas, I'll start mentioning you, and if you want to start sharing your screen at that point, then we can smoothly transition into your presentation. I'll say a few words of just sort of introduction and thanks. It won't take too long.
That's great. And so Thomas, if you can try and be finished by about 1:45, so we can have some questions.
I think what we talked about is that Thomas will speak for about 30 to 40 minutes roughly, and then we'll have about 20 to 30 minutes of discussion.
It should be around 35 minutes, but yeah,
okay, cool.
Perfect.
We should stop by 2 or 3 minutes to the hour, and if Kyle, you can sort of sign off, and then I'll just say a few words of farewell and mention the next seminar again, That's
Sure.
it. It's YouTube is already streaming us and will automatically record things. And so it'll be uploaded very soon to the IASPM YouTube site and all of that. So yeah, all is well.
That's very good. So yeah, at the end, I have somebody from IASPM Norden who's going to help me with moderating. Just because sometimes I don't keep everything in order, or I miss some things that people are writing in the chat. But that's helpful because at the end, a few minutes to the hour, I'll hand back over to you, Rupert, and you can sort of say farewell and remind everyone again about the next event.
Perfect. I guess we're all used to doing these things nowadays.
It's getting smoother for sure.
And we're slowly collecting a nice collection of seminars. It's going to be quite a thing, I think, over time to have this history of IASPM research seminars.
Yeah.
From everyone.
I'll just pop back in a second.
Yeah, sure. How are things at Huddersfield?
Huddersfield, well, all good, really. I mean, I'm on sabbatical.
Yes, I've seen that actually.
for 6 months. So radically, since January, I've been working at home. I've not actually left. I think I've been in Huddersfield for about 5 hours in the last 12 months.
Okay.
And basically, I'm working at home the whole time. So yeah, I'm working at home even more because I'm on sabbatical than I was working at home before. So it's a strange existence, but it's fine. The sun's shining today. We're in spring. I've been vaccinated.
Have you? I was going to ask. Congratulations. That's really amazing.
I've had my first one. I think a lot of people who are over 50 basically in the UK. I think 50% of our population is now, 50% of the adult population has been vaccinated.
Yeah.
And it's going very fast here. I think we have some vaccination being manufactured in this country and it really helps.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very, very enviable. Things have stalled significantly in a lot of Europe and certainly in Norway.
It's going to slow down here from next month.
Oh.
Their supplies are starting to run out and the pipeline's just not going as fast. I think we were getting vaccine coming in from Europe and the European countries are saying, hang on, why are we sending it to England or to the UK rather when we haven't got enough ourselves? So
yeah,
fair enough.
My understanding, is that the EU has been sending vaccines to places that aren't reciprocating. And it's, I don't like the term vaccine nationalism, but, some of this is going on and it's a bit of a scandal, to be honest.
Yeah. But we're quite a small country. I mean, our population's much lower than the EU, so we're able to vaccine quicker. And it's a smaller country. It's very geographically limited, so it makes that easier. And some of it's being produced in this country and was discovered, and the scientists were from here. So, but obviously the EU send it all to a central place, I think, and then distribute it to different countries. So it's a much more complicated job, I think.
Yeah. No, it's. Some strange things are happening. It's a difficult and crazy world.
We'll get there in the end, I guess. But so we've about 4 minutes. I'm going to start, if it's all right with you, I'll start letting people in.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll probably go dark here just while people are joining, and
I won't have to try and. Well, I could let them all in at once, I suppose. Now there's an admit all button. I'll wait. We have 4 minutes.
So just to make sure, Thomas, you're okay with everything right now?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have any questions while Rupert is saying words of introduction or while I'm introducing, just send a note in the chat or something like that, and we'll figure it out. But I'm super excited and I'm so glad that you accepted the invitation.
I'm extremely honored to be invited. It was a really lovely surprise as well. So
yeah, well, I think, these are some of the most important discussions that we can be having at the moment in, music teaching and research in general. So I think it's really incredible that we're doing this globally like we are about to.
Yeah, no, it still was quite a new experience for me I did a keynote in January for the BFE and RMA student conference. So I've done a kind of like run through of how it feels to sit in my office alone with my desk at a weird height. So that, so it kind of feels familiar already. Yeah, sure. It's always a different experience each time. So it'll be exciting to see who turns up today.
Yeah, the attendance has been really amazing at the events. I think I've been at 2 of the 3 that have happened previously. One was in a time zone awkwardness for me, which I'll say something about in my introduction. But yeah.
Well, I let Mattia in before I realised. Hi, Mattia. Before I realised she's not actually speaking, is she? But anyway, so she's sitting very politely and quietly, and there's another 10 people at the moment in the waiting room. So
amazing.
More will turn up.
I'll just go dark here for a second while I grab myself some water and things, but I'll be right back.
Okay. And I think I'll. No, I'm going to wait. Watch my clock. No, it's 1:02 now, so I'll let everyone in now.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. We'll be starting in just a minute. If you can mute your microphone for now, that would be a good thing. Thank you. So, well, welcome everybody. I'm sure we'll have more people joining soon. My name is Rupert Till. I'm chair of the International Association for the Study of Popular Music, IASPM, and I'm very glad to be able to say that today IASPM Norden is hosting the IASPM Research Seminar for March. I've just got a couple of things I will share with you. Let's see if I can make the wonderful screen sharing work. Hopefully, I'll be able to do this. Oops, let's go to the right place. So I'd just like to tell you a little about what's happening in the seminar next month, very briefly. So first of all, if you want to join IASPM, that would be great. That way you won't miss any of these research seminars. You can do that at iaspm.net. You don't have to be an IASPM member to watch these things, but it helps. This seminar will be put on YouTube. Feel free to use it for teaching. And all the other seminars are also on there as well and will be continuously uploaded to there. We are recording this, this seminar and we're streaming it live on YouTube as well. The IASPM conference in 2021 was to be happening in South Korea, will now happen in 2022. And the call for papers will reopen again soon. Next month's seminar is IASPM Research Seminar in April. It's being hosted by the Latin America branch, IASPM AL, and focuses on a roundtable on popular music research in Latin America, covering key issues in popular music research in the whole continent. It's going to be amazing. That's on the 22nd of April. So it's going to cover various subjects, looking at the approach generally in Latin America. And it's got some superstar speakers, I think. Marta Oloa, who kind of founded the branch, as well as Julio, who's a former chair of both IASPM and the branch, as was Marta. And on top of that, Professor Laura Jordan, a leading musicologist in Chile, so there's Brazil, Peru, and Chile, and of course the current chair of IASPM Latin America. So that's in March. Without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen if can remember how to do that. And we'll move on to today's seminar. So I think, without further ado, I would like to hand over to Kyle Devine.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kyle Devine. I'm currently the chair of IASPM Norden. It's a real pleasure to say hello and to welcome everybody here. And I see so many people entering now, which is wonderful. Before introducing our speaker, I just want to sort of continue on the theme of a little bit of housekeeping. First, I want to thank the IASPM Executive Committee for taking the initiative to kickstart and organize this global speaker series. I also want to thank the local branches and individual speakers for all of their work in making these events possible, both past and future. And I also want to, acknowledge or mention the difficulty of scheduling an event like this, given the challenges of time zones in a genuinely international academic community. So I apologize if this is either too late or too early for you. But I hope, you can watch this at a later date on YouTube if you weren't able to join us live. I also want to sort of say that it's not customary in Norway, at least in the part of Norway that I live, to begin events like this with acknowledgements of unceded land. And also, our community has different approaches to this matter based on our various regions and things. But I still think I'd like to begin at least by underlining the importance of issues of land practices and rights claims, as well as contested character of belonging that exists in all of the countries and institutions, not to mention the ostensibly digital, virtual, online spaces in which we all carry out our work. I'd also like to thank the IASPM Norden board and its membership for planning and being here. And we've sort of intersected this with our own study days. We normally hold an in-person study day, but we switched to online study days throughout the semester for obvious reasons. So this is the third of four, and you're welcome to attend the next one. Just let us know. We have a Facebook page and things like that if you want further information. For today and our seminar, we're really, really fortunate to be joined by Thomas Hilder, who is an associate professor and ethnomusicologist at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim. Thomas has published widely on music and indigeneity, including in relation to digital media. And he's also the founder of the LGBTQ+ music study group. Today, he's going to be talking about transformative pedagogies in the musicological classroom, a topic about which he's recently been thinking and writing in really inspiring and also deeply critical, committed, and creative ways. Thomas is going to speak for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion of about 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to do my best to moderate, and Mikkel Vod, also on the board of IASPM Norden, who's waving now, hi Mikkel, is going to help me just to make sure we don't miss things. So use the raise hand function, or just write hand in the chat, or if you prefer, write your question in the chat, and we'll do our best to get to you. So with that out of the way, and without further delay, please join me in welcoming Thomas Hilder.
Hello, can you all hear me okay? Perfect. And can you see the presentation and my face all right? Perfect. Thank you very much, Kyle, for that wonderful introduction and for the very generous invitation to allow me to speak. So I thank you and the rest of the IASPM Norden board for this opportunity to speak about teaching. I will go straight into my presentation now, but just to let you know that I am in Trondheim, Norway, where we have currently very low cases of COVID. And so the experiences I'm teaching about might kind of sound quite bizarre in relation to a lot of the rest of the world's experiences of teaching in the last couple of months, well, in the last 12 months since the beginning of the pandemic. And as Carl rightly pointed out, it's important to remember also of the land that I work on, which is part of Sápmi, the southern part of the larger Sami traditional geographical area. As a teacher, I often incorporate the HIV/AIDS pandemic in my curricula, especially in my classes on applied ethnomusicology and music, gender, and sexuality. In one class, where I planned to explore the role of performing arts in HIV/AIDS awareness campaigns, I began with a general discussion on when, where, and how students had first learned about HIV/AIDS. As I listened to the group discussions, I was shocked to realize that students had been offered little formal education on this ongoing pandemic. I abandoned my teaching plan. Propelled by a sense of responsibility, I proceeded to share my own knowledge of HIV/AIDS, about testing, antiretroviral drugs, continued discrimination and stigmatization, while remaining cautious about turning the class into sex education. Only then did I recognize how my knowledge had been acquired through my own experiences as a queer man, through informal and caring queer mentorship. To make sense of this discrepancy in what I had assumed to be general knowledge, I took the opportunity to come out to my students. For information to acquire greater significance, I reflected, it has to be contextualized in embodied experience. Later in my office, I documented these unexpected moments of improvisation and personal disclosure through reflective notes. I felt raw, and not least because it reminded me of my own time at school in the United Kingdom, when it was forbidden, in line with the infamous Section 28, for teachers to discuss homosexuality. That law, in place from 1988 to 2003, was the strategy of the Thatcher administration to address HIV/AIDS pandemic. And it sits rather uncomfortably next to the calls by activists at that time. And I show you here, for example, the poster that has been very much associated with the ACT UP activists in New York, which then spread to different chapters throughout the world. In a paper discussing the potentials of a queer pedagogy, the educational scientist and psychoanalyst Deborah Britzman wrote that teaching AIDS makes radically insufficient the categories education has historically offered. She was writing in 1995, that is 1 year before the first antiretroviral drugs were made available to some people living with HIV. But the statement continues to resonate today. What legacies do we impose on students through what we do or don't teach? How do we curate tough discussions that we feel morally compelled to have with students? What are the teaching methods that might disrupt a radically insufficient education system? At the very least, I imagined, my class had invited students to examine the ideologies that underlie a normative education system which refuses to educate with care. As the eminent feminist scholar Bell Hooks writes in her 1994 book, Teaching to Transgress, the classroom remains the most radical space of possibility in the academy. For Bell Hooks, teaching is a holistic, political, and spiritual praxis which has the potential to critically address
You're muted there, Thomas.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
As the eminent feminist scholar Bell Hooks writes in her 1994 book, Teaching to Transgress, the classroom remains the most radical space of possibility in the academy. For Bell Hooks, teaching is a holistic political and spiritual praxis which has the potential to critically address social injustices through transformative learning. Her work is part of and has greatly influenced a larger field of critical feminist and anti-racist pedagogy, which has posed fundamental questions about liberal education traditions in Western societies and has proposed radical changes to higher education. Drawing on the critical pedagogical turn offered by Paulo Freire, critical feminist and anti-racist pedagogical perspectives have highlighted the histories of exclusions from universities of Indigenous people, women, working classes, Black people, people of color, disabled and neurodiverse people, and queer people. Scholars have linked this to biased syllabi, patriarchal modes of communication, and pre-constructivist teaching practices that disavow the identities, bodies, and emotions of students. Critical pedagogues create curricula, instigate activities, and design seating formations that challenge traditional canons, modes of thinking, and models of communication. A space is co-curated to enable sharing, experimentation, reflection, and action. They have also advocated for empowerment, inclusivity, and in some contexts, safety. As Bell Hooks writes, transformational learning can only take place if we, as teachers, transgress conventional classroom activities, power relations, and space through care and love. To teach in a manner that respects and cares for the souls of our students, Hooks espouses, is essential if we are to provide the necessary conditions where learning can most deeply and intimately begin. In this presentation, I describe my aspiration toward Bell Hooks' notion of transgressive pedagogy by focusing on notions of care, hope, and community within the neoliberal university. Bell Hooks' book touched me deeply when colleagues shared it with me a few years ago. For one, it summoned from my memory the most powerful moments I myself have experienced as a student, and it gave nourishment and conviction to values I had already been striving for, with varying degrees of success as a university teacher. Over the last decade, I have taught a range of courses on ethnomusicology, Nordic music, music and social justice, and music, gender and sexuality, to name a few, at different institutions in Germany and Norway. My teaching has changed in response to the different student bodies, the institutional structures, and my own personal and political transformations. At the same time, I've become acutely aware of larger structural inequalities, exclusions, and damage with our own university systems. These include escalating student fees in many parts of the world, homogenous student bodies, failing systems of pastoral and mental health support, the auditing of teaching through student feedback and other bureaucracy, increasing class sizes, understaffing, and overstretched teaching schedules. In many ways, the COVID pandemic has accentuated social inequalities already in play in the academy and made more apparent to many of us the essential ingredients of teaching, which are at the moment unavailable or difficult to conjure through remote teaching. Though these trends differ in different national contexts, one consistent observation I have made is that among academics, the task of teaching is generally valued much less than research. Scholars rarely discuss their own teaching, few talk about it passionately, and I've had to search hard to find support for my own challenges in the transgressive classroom. Wendy Brown has warned how within a neoliberal system, scholars who enjoy teaching undergraduates are often perceived by colleagues as losers, quote unquote. Likewise, feminist scholars Jane Nicholas and Jamie Lee Burrood have argued that the casual complaints by teaching staff about students these days often simply replicate the heteropatriarchal imperial structures of the university institution. So today, I would like to share reflections on my own experiences of teaching, especially the course Global Perspectives on Music, Gender and Sexuality, which has been one of my own attempts at performing an intervention in this heteropatriarchal imperial university system. I taught this course last semester as I was completing a teacher training program at my home institution, NTNU. Focusing on pedagogical methods, classroom dynamics, and experiments in and outside of the classroom, I would like to contribute to the much welcome increased and politicized discussions on music teaching in higher education over the last years. With careful guidance from critical feminist, anti-racist, and queer pedagogical theory, I would like to take up the provocative challenge posed 5 years ago by the musicologist William Cheng to center care in our work as academics. Here in particular, I'm guided by conversations with dear colleagues at NTNU, and those include Jennifer Brandlat, Stina Bang-Svensson, Hannah Musiol, and Mary Helga Eng. So thinking through notions of radical care, I call for ethics and practices of community, relationality, and hope in order to invite and inspire dialogue with you today. I speak acknowledging at the same time that I'm still in the early days of my teaching career, that educational science is a new field for me, and that I recognize how I need to continue to develop many aspects of my teaching. My course, Global Perspectives on Music, Gender and Sexuality, draws heavily on intersectional feminist and queer perspectives in music studies. I introduce students to a wide range of case studies, including Madonna, Beyonce, boy bands, the Hijras of India, and the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and explore different theories and topics such as masculinities, indigenous feminism, pinkwashing, and trans studies, to name but a few. As always in my classes were based around diverse activities and group formations, including discussions, online interactive exercises, storytelling and audiovisual analyses, in addition to more conventional lecturing. The course consisted of 3 hours of classes per week over a 12-week period. Around 25 students participated in the course, all enrolled on bachelor and master's programs in musicology or music technology. Course assessment comprised 2 semester essays. I taught this course last autumn at a time when the city of Trondheim had very few COVID cases and when it was possible to hold in-person teaching, albeit with quite a few restrictions in the classroom. The course allowed me to experiment further with notions of transgressive pedagogies, even though I recognize COVID disciplined us in many ways too. At my home institution, I'm often surprised by the way that many students come with the notion that the university should be a neutral space, that their identities and embodied knowledge have little place in the classroom, and that emotions and politics are simply a distraction to the real business of science and knowledge. In line with a feminist pedagogy, I welcomed to the individual students' identities, embodied experiences, and existing knowledge in the classroom, reminding them that the topics and class materials could raise many personal and sensitive issues. Aware of power dynamics, I invited students to speak, monitoring the airtime of individual voices, though also sensitive to the needs of introverted students. I also encouraged forms of reflection by inviting students to write weekly field note entries on our digital teaching platform, through which they could share the things they had found most transformative, what they had found most difficult, how classes has affected them emotionally and ethically, and what they would like to learn more about. Indeed, self-reflection is itself a key component of a feminist pedagogy, as it invites transformational reassessment of students' existing knowledge and epistemologies on a personal level. Likewise, I bring my own identity in the classroom through sharing brief stories and revealing life experiences to elucidate more abstract ideas. For example, when students had difficulty understanding gender binaries as both constructed and embodied, I recounted a story of when I, as a schoolchild, consciously tried to walk in a more masculine way in order to evade bullying at the time. And this story kind of really helped clarify for certain students what gender performativity might mean, drawing on, of course, Judith Butler's idea of gender performativity. So as Bell Hooks proposes, revealing one's own vulnerabilities as a teacher is ethically important if we are to expect our students to become vulnerable and be open to transformation themselves. Nonetheless, my embodied proximity to the topics and teaching materials in this course elicited challenges. First, I felt an even greater pressure to teach successfully ideas in which I am personally and emotionally invested. Will students, for example, this was a question I had for myself, understand the concepts of hegemonic masculinity or heteronormativity when we discuss formative texts of a queer musicology? When teaching didn't go so well, it felt like I had failed my own very being. Second, I experienced that students reacted to my classes in unpredictable ways, and discussions were often challenging. I found this especially the case when discussing issues of trans rights, representation, and cultural appropriation after watching together the film Paris is Burning from the early 1990s. Such unpredictability and instability in the classroom can lead one to constantly doubt one's subject knowledge and teaching skills. I have found that this resonates with the experiences of colleagues following an anti-racist pedagogy, whose challenging classroom dynamics make pedagogues perpetually feel like a beginner, as documented by Stephen Brookfield. Third, I sometimes experience resistance and criticism from students about a whole range of issues to do with my teaching that I often felt unwarranted. On one level, this may have had to do with my general attempt to undermine power hierarchies, resonating with Bell Hooks' observation that it is often students who discipline teachers when they transgress. Having discussed with other colleagues whose embodied identity is somehow present in the course materials, I have learned that such microaggressions often come into play and cost extra physical and emotional energy for teachers. Teaching began to feel like an experiment in both transformation, but also in administering different forms of care, both for myself as well as for my students. One way to compensate for student discomfort, I've come to realize, is to reaffirm my commitment to them. As Nicholas and Barud write, giving students recognition as fellow humans can be a powerful act. And this has revealed itself most palpably during the current COVID pandemic, when, after lockdown precipitated just over a year ago, I used time in my initial digital classes to check in with students, ask how they were, and invite them to share what strategies they had developed to cope. Likewise, I opened up about my own concerns, what strategies I'd been adopting, and relating to them that I had no idea whether what I was teaching was relevant for the new world we were living in. I was aware I was transgressing, but it was difficult to assess what was appropriate in this context. Another observation I've made in Norway is the lack of pastoral care assigned to the role of the university teacher, which contrasts greatly to my own education in the United Kingdom. As if in Norway, other institutions like the state or the heteronormative family will take care of the task of caring. Nonetheless, my intuitive improvisation in this context, in which I acknowledged our collective vulnerability and my own lack of authority, created a whole new sense of collectivity. Students shared stories and affirmed that they appreciated the classes continued in real time, for it was the classes that gave them a sense of normality and community. This current semester, as I took stock of my own exhaustion and noted the long-term effects on the well-being of my departmental community, I propose that we dedicate one session to our departmental student forum to the topic of mental health. Alongside a student who was keen to address the topic, I invited a psychologist from the student services in Trondheim to speak at the event. The three of us offered stories on our own experiences with mental health, the pandemic of depression and anxiety in academia, and strategies for coping with the COVID crisis. All of these practices foregrounded relationality and well-being and nurtured shared responsibility in line with a feminist pedagogy. While the classroom, be it physical or digital, does offer potentials to break educational norms, it is not a blank canvas. The longer I teach, the more I become attuned to how the architecture of universities disciplines both students and myself. One strategy I've adopted is to arrange activities, extracurricular or otherwise, outside of the classroom. So drawing on experiences by other colleagues, I have set up some new collaborations that have created physical and virtual spaces beyond the scheduled classroom. I was keen to build collaborations with Kunsthal as one of the most progressive cultural institutions in Trondheim, since I recognize their work and the spaces they created could offer powerful encounters for my students. I arranged a visit and guide of their exhibition called Who Wants to Live Forever, which touched on various feminist, post-colonial and queer themes of my own course. That semester, I also co-hosted with Hannah Musial, Jennifer Brandlat and Libe Garcia Saranz, a webinar with the eminent historian, artist and activist Sarah Schulman, who co-produced the film United in Anger about AIDS activism in the 1980s and 1990s, a film which I also placed on the course syllabus. It is the a poster that advertises the film. We had hoped to also do a public screening, but the then restrictions made us have to cancel that event, unfortunately. So this gave students the opportunity to participate live in an academic activist event. But most significant was my collaboration with the local feminist music festival in Trondheim called Feminalen, which resulted in the curation of a panel discussion led by my students as part of the festival program in October. I invited 4 students to participate, students who organized and prepared in their own free time and offered an impressive intervention at the festival. While they incorporated many aspects of what they had learnt in class to this festival context, they in turn brought that activist experience back into the university context too. So disrupting the boundary between in and outside of the academy, and also the boundary between theorists and activists, my pedagogy is certainly in line with Jack Halberstam's theorizing of a queer pedagogy. What I learned is that activities in different and real world contexts can radically reorder space and power and enable new ways of thinking and being. Teaching music, gender and sexuality not only requires me to be vulnerable, but has also taught me to be brave. Another topic I felt ethically compelled to address in the classroom is the Me Too movement, even though it is the most risky and challenging. As a cisgender man, I feel I have to curate such classes extremely carefully, drawing advice from my wider feminist pedagogical community. In dialogue with students, I discussed how they would like to carry this out. I used clear trigger warnings, and I revealed my pedagogical practice with students in line with Bell Hooks's call for methodological transparency. Indeed, when we transgress, we need to alert our students about the risky and experimental journey we're embarking on. I set 2 documentary films as optional viewing material, cautious not to force students who felt uncomfortable. Students asked me to dedicate classroom time to share thoughts on the topic, so I set aside 1 hour to discuss the films in the final class of the course. Creating a circle formation, I opened the discussion by being completely honest with students that I found the films difficult to watch, that I felt uncomfortable holding the discussion, but that I also felt an ethical obligation to hold it. Highlighting my reflection process and my insecurity made the class feel a lot more comfortable and gave them, I suspect, a greater sense of responsibility in the classroom. What followed was an informative, sensitive, and powerful conversation that allowed students to share their own ideas and concerns, moving from a space of safety to risk. As I've learned, we cannot guarantee safety in the classroom. While the concept and practice of safe space has been important and beneficial to therapeutic and activist spaces, many scholars have over the last decade questioned its appropriateness for educational contexts. Indeed, the idea of safety in the classroom has been criticized for pandering to white middle-class fragility and avoiding real-world complicated and fraught discussions on discrimination and privilege. Bell Hooks contends that the instability and unpredictability of the classroom is a necessary requirement for personal transformation. Likewise, the educational scientist Gerd Biester, who critiques neoliberal university education trends that strive for safety and predictability, has called for a pedagogy that is willing to engage with the beautiful risk inherent in all education worthy of the name. Indeed, this is what anti-racist pedagogues have argued as the necessity for brave spaces. As Lucia Pawlowski writes, brave space assumes that tension, conflict, and risk are at the heart of the cognitive and personal transformation integral to learning. Discussing with my colleague Stina Bang-Svensson, I realized it is here where an ethics of care comes into play, where care is not about protecting students from, but rather giving students the skills to address discomforting subjects in ways meaningful to and transformative for them. In her recent book, Matters of Care, Maria Puig de la Bella Casa shares that care is so vital to the fabric of life that it remains an ongoing matter of struggle and a terrain of constant normative appropriation. She highlights, on the one hand, the inequalities of care in terms of giver and receiver along lines of gender, race, and class. At the same time, she warns that care, in some instances, can be harmful, sustain imperial power structures, and be appropriated by neoliberalism. She writes, an ethics of care cannot be about a realm of normative obligations, but rather about thick, impure involvement in a world where the question of how to care needs to be posed. It is this complex and nuanced understanding that Hobart and Kneser have termed radical care. They write, as the traditional undervalued labor of caring becomes recognized as a key element of individual and community resilience, radical care provides a roadmap for an otherwise. I return here to William Cheng's attempt to place care at the heart of our work as music scholars. Drawing on crip, queer, and slow academia theory, he warns against cynicism and paranoid readings and asks us to reconceptualize academic ethics. Resisting this neoliberal mindset goes hand in hand with a radical commitment to reparative motions. It begins with finding truth in care and with reevaluating what really matters. Acknowledging power hierarchies, he writes, because repair is a privilege, its exigencies should weigh that much more heavily on the shoulders of those who are in the most secure positions to undertake the task. His work resonates his words resonate with numerous other scholars who highlight the importance within neoliberal academia of working through despair and instead providing resources of hope, especially by those in power. Indeed, as Bell Hooks writes in her later book, Teaching Community, A Pedagogy of Hope, hopefulness empowers us to work for justice, even as the forces of injustice may gain greater power for a time. Drawing further from Paulo Freire, she implores us through our teaching to sustain our hope and create community with justice as the core foundation. Reflecting on this literature during the pandemic has awoken in me a greater sense of agency, creativity, and hope, even when I recognize the structural inequalities, exclusions, and damage within our university systems. In teaching, I have found my calling. Recognizing structural failures, I have taken time this year to connect with students and affirm my commitment to them on a human level as they navigate the anxieties of the pandemic. I have had to develop new ethics of care and boundaries as I accompany students on their own personal and spiritual journeys in life. Thinking through HIV/AIDS, Me Too, and mental health, I have recalibrated my vision of relevant curricula and care-centered pedagogy, becoming braver to address institutional legacies of neglect and erasure. In turn, I have built my own teaching community of peers who share the same commitment to transgressive pedagogy. I have come to realize how teaching is the aspect of my job where I feel I have the most impact, where I feel I am most whole. Teaching offers me the glimmer of hope and emancipatory potential in an otherwise failing and uncaring academy. Though I acknowledge my current teaching in the pandemic cannot live up to my aspirations of transgressive pedagogy. I have been endeavoring to transgress in the classroom for several years, but these and other feminist, anti-racist and queer perspectives render palpable the overall pedagogical ethics and praxis to which I aspire. And the more I teach, the more I recognize how much further I can develop as a teacher. In particular, I'm inspired by Christina Llewellyn and Jennifer Llewellyn's notion of a restorative pedagogy. Drawing on feminist thought and notions of relationality, they describe this notion thus. At the core of a restorative approach is shared or shareable knowledge rather than what is already knowable. It is an approach to knowledge that resists the market orientation of current pedagogical practices, which fail to equip students with the capacity to question the known and to participate in the creation of new ideas, essential capabilities for lifelong learning and democratic citizenship. The potential result is a greater diversity of students who see themselves as the curriculum and thus as a part of a larger political community that struggles for justice. One thing that has become abundantly clear to me is how I still need to work on building this sense of student community, relationality, and collective responsibility. As Linda Briskin and Buffy Smith wisely propose, our teaching needs to move from not simply just pointing out the ills of society, but has to also inspire agency, accountability, and action. This will require me to instill in my students a sense of confidence and bravery, as well as a desire to take risks themselves, and not simply the more privileged students who can generally afford to take risks. Risk as queer pedagogy, to draw on Mary Bryson and Susan de Castel, needs to be a tool, strategy, and ethics available to all in the classroom if transformational learning is the aspiration. To end, I would like to thank my students and cherished colleagues and dear friends who have become my own teaching community of transgressive pedagogy. Indeed, the stories, reflections, ideas I share with you today are not solely mine. As Audre Lorde has written, there are no new ideas. There are only new ways of making them felt. In particular, I would like to acknowledge Rasika Ayotika, Andrea Bollman, Jennifer Brunlut, Mari Helge Eng, Amanda Fayant, Jill Halstead, Emily Gale, Hannah Musial, Daniel O'Gorman, Stina Van Svensson, Robert Szymanek, Cherie Tan, Libe Garcia Zarans, and my partner, Stuart Gibson. As Sarah Ahmed reminds us, citations are the foundations of knowledge we want to impart and the worlds we want to create. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you so much. If you stop sharing your screen, we'll get a, yeah, there we are, with all the applause and everything. An unbelievably insightful and such an important talk. I am going to take a risk in the, we'll open to questions now, and while people think about the questions they want to ask, I am going to take a risk in asking a question that might make me unpopular or seem, I don't know where this question will lead or what it would make me seem like, but I want to ask a meta question, which is why are, we don't know how many people are watching this on YouTube or how many people will watch it later. So maybe many people will do that, and I hope so. But I want to ask you why you think that 26 people are here in Zoom, whereas in previous meetings we've had over 100 people watching talks about the history of the drum kit. And I want to know what that says about this organization. I am frankly a little bit disheartened and quite furious.
Kyle, thank you very much for your very frank feelings there. It's really important for us to engage with each other in these very honest and passionate ways, actually. This is actually the first seminar that I've attended in this series, so I can't say anything in comparison to the previous talks. I haven't done any studies of IASPM and the audience, but I think it is a very important question to ask. And I think basically you're referring to the fourth or fifth paragraph of my presentation, where I discuss how we as an academic community often very much focus on research, and we forget about the other very important aspects of our mandate, our social mandate, the mandate that's been given to us by society, which is to teach, but also to do administrative work, to create infrastructure, and to create new spaces and events and organizations like we're doing today. So that is one big question I do have, and it's something that's also been frustrating me over the last years, especially as I recognize how a lot of that comes from institutional pressures, from the pressures of a neoliberal academia that places greater value and focus on research being a published logocentric article or book chapter or book. That is how we understand what research is today, and that's very kind of far removed from my understanding of not only research but also what I think is important for us academics, and also for what we offer society. And this is one of the things that I've noticed in the last years when I've been very busy building up new courses at NTNU. And I can say that it's taken a huge amount of time and effort to build up those courses and to develop my skills as a teacher. And of course, that also was accompanied with the sense of kind of imposter syndrome for the fact that I couldn't continue doing the kinds of research that I had been used to doing as a PhD or a postdoc up until that point, and therefore feeling like you're not as qualified or valuable as an academic. And then I gradually realized more and more, and in dialogue with good colleagues and friends, and of course reading literature like the text by bell hooks, that actually no, teaching was the foundation of my role, and in fact it was the space where I could have the greatest impact. So yeah, that's a kind of roundabout way of not answering your question, but hopefully you've got an insight into my feelings about the issue too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also I want to emphasize that I don't think it's bad that we had 100 people listening to Matt Brennan's talk on the drums. It's an important topic. It's surprising, honestly, and deflating to me that more people involved in IASPM weren't doing this, but or aren't, able to commit the time to learning about this and talking about this with someone who is clearly, done, as I said before, some critical, creative, and committed thinking about all of these things. So I'm so grateful. And I could ask a number of questions about how also, we are, you and I, foreigners on some level in Nordic countries. And I could ask a number of questions about how we deal with some of these things, these issues. In the Nordic countries, my department anyway is fairly homogeneous in terms of the student body that takes our degrees and things like that. But I do want to open it up to other questions. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand or jump in. We're few enough that you can just jump in.
I think Antti had a question.
Yeah, hello, Thomas.
Hi, Antti, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Well, yeah, I was just wondering there, I didn't hear too much about music in your talk after all, I think. So I was wondering what's anything, is there anything specific or particular when all this is transformed into the music classroom, or as you put it in the title, musicological classroom, and what might be the differences there, between teaching music and teaching musicology, or then maybe teaching even ethnomusicology, or teaching something like sociology of music and so forth. In a way, relating to the question that what are the kind of not just implications, but also maybe the preconditions there. In relation to, let's say, musicianship and well, I guess I could just frame this by saying that I struggle with in my contemporary situation with this idea that I work in a university of arts without ever being self-identifying as an artist or even basically musician. So what are my credentials then to do what I do, basically?
Thank you, Antti. I guess I could say various things in response, and I hope I respond in a way that's helpful. But yeah, I think we are all very concerned about our own kind of position in the institutions. And of course, I mentioned, like, having worked in different institutions, you're always faced with different student bodies who come with different expectations and different experiences. What do they expect from a class in a department of music or wherever we may be? In my own context, I am at the Department of Music at NTNU, which is actually a very big department, and it consists of 4 different sections: music technology, dance studies, performance, and musicology. And I'm housed in the musicology section. And our program in both the bachelor and master's programs, we have quite a unique offering within a larger landscape of bachelor and master programs in musicology in the whole country of Norway, in that we offer a combination of practical and theoretical courses where we have performance, listening, harmony and counterpoint, composition, music history, ethnomusicology, and a range of specialization courses. So I've had to think really carefully about what I'm actually offering in dialogue with the rest of the program on offer. And I recognize how I am kind of one of the members of staff assigned the task of offering the kind of humanities background of the critical thinking, very much in that larger histories of humanities, critical thought, legacy. And at the same time, I'm very aware of not turning my classes, as I hope I've made clear in the presentation, into purely cerebral or theoretical spaces, that there are embodied experiences in that too. I haven't incorporated musical performance in my classes very often myself, the occasional workshop. But as I said, I try to definitely center the body and emotions as well in different activities in different ways. But music is definitely always central. And it's interesting because I do get the question from certain students about, well, this is a class on in the Department of Music as part of a music program. And I guess my answer is always like, well, what does that actually mean? How do we define music? Again, it goes back to all those discussions in the late 1980s and 1990s about what is music? Is music something autonomous, or is it part of a complex assemblage of different cultural and social practices? And I guess I feel kind of compelled to really highlight that the messy nature of how we define music actually, and its inherent connection to all these other aspects of the modern political world.
Absolutely. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. It was very, very pleasant and insightful. Thank you. Thank you a lot, Thomas. And I definitely can relate to everything you said. It resonated very well with me, the ideas of care, about transgression of the boundaries, let's say, between the teacher as a subject of knowledge, traditionally defined, and then the students, and then coming out and all these things. Very good. But like Antivilla, I also had difficulties to imagine how it looks like and how really music then takes the central part, as you said. Do you connect it to some music videos, then you comment on them? Or you mentioned the documentary, but music is not really there. So I got a little bit confused about that. And also, I'm now going to take a risk by asking an additional question. You said you are talking from the point of view which is anti-patriarchal, or from a minority point of view or something. But I want to first get an idea what you mean by patriarchal way of talking about music. I'm not talking just about, talking from the point of view of women or people of color, but for example, if we analyze a piece of music, what would be patriarchal way of talking about this? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really nice question, actually, and that's made me think about my presentation in a slightly different way, which is what we always hope for when we get questions. To go back to the first part of your question, yeah, maybe I didn't offer a huge number of examples of like individual class situations, but as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, I incorporate a lot of audio-visual material of, for example, music videos, musical performances that become the center of the material. And the other discussions then emerge through that material as well. So I mentioned, you know, I take figures like Beyonce as a really kind of powerful case study where I introduce perspectives on Black feminism, for example, and I draw my own previous research on Sami music as well, to look at artists like Mari Boine from Norway, from northern Norway, and to look how her music can also be interpreted in terms of indigenous feminisms as well. To go to the point about what is a patriarchal way of talking about music, I guess when I use the term patriarchy within various paragraphs of my presentation, I was thinking specifically about the ways in which I remember being brought up in schooling, in the schooling system in the United Kingdom, where forms of shaming and domination were very key to that pedagogical practice, which of course is something that a lot of us also experienced and bear with us still today. So I'm very conscious about the modes of communication that we adopt in the classroom with our students, with our who are members of our community, to really critique those forms of communication that I dealt with as a child. But I guess to kind of move away from a patriarchal mode of thinking about music, I guess I would go back to Susan McClary's ideas from 30 years ago, where, you know, she was very much critiquing the idea of musical autonomy, that somehow music was removed from society, from emotions, from the body, from the political, from identity. So I guess I hope that I made that very central to my presentation, that you know, very much foregrounding those issues of the political identity, the bodies, the body, the emotional, really is one of the ways in which we could work against a patriarchal mode of thinking about music. But of course, there are many others, and many other strategies, and it can't be just a way of speaking about it. One of the things I hope I've really showed in the presentation is that it has to be accompanied by the pedagogical methods you use as well. So it can't just be the materials, it has to be the methods. And of course, one of the things I'm getting at is that actually the institutional structures we have are themselves very much shaped by these imperial patriarchal structures that we have to navigate, and we can never actually fully overcome. And this is very much in line with a lot of the discussions that have been going on recently. I'm thinking of a text by Michael Figueroa in North Carolina, who's recently published about decolonising the world music course curriculum, where actually decolonization is the kind of aspiration. You know, we can't overcome, you know, imperialism in very simple ways like changing the syllabus, etc., etc.
Thanks a lot for clarifying this, even if you repeat it, but it's now much more clear for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question, great answer. There are more questions, but I am supposed to throw it back to Rupert. You know, I don't know, Rupert, if we can keep the room open to continue talking, but
so thank you very much to IASPM Norden for organising this great event. It's been really great. I think numbers are a complicated question that we can discuss perhaps another time. I'd encourage you to perhaps use the IASPM mailing list, and you could continue to ask questions there, and we could keep this discussion going, because I think there's lots of really interesting and important questions and discussion things to get into. But thank you very much for IASPM Norden in particular for organising, and for Thomas for speaking and doing such a great talk and such a interesting and stimulating talk. We look forward to seeing you in April for a session hosted by IASPM Latin America, and that's April the 22nd, but we'll circulate more information. So just to say a big round of applause to Thomas for his wonderful talk.
And thank you very much to you all for listening and participating, and especially to IASPM Norden for inviting me.